you there? All right, we're going to go super fast. Oops. Not bad. I'll turn the light off so we can see it a little bit better. All right, so rhetorical situation is, again, with us dealing with rhetoric, it's that study of how to speak effectively. So these are essentially the concepts, and it's not going to be brand new to you, but just more of a affirmation of the concepts, the things that you want to be aware of anytime you would be in a situation of speaking. This also could carry over into some situations with writing, depending on essays and assignments and things like that. But for our purposes, we're certainly kind of thinking these are the components that go into the whole relationship with our rhetorical situation. So the context and culture, you're going to be shocked by the first part. That's you. You're the speaker. Yes, you are that anime-looking figure, Matthew Clark. That's you. Right there. You have beautiful eyes. I like your eyelashes. Very nice. Very nice. All right, so you got the speaker. Obviously, that's going to be you. And if you got a speaker, you also have, I think Alexis might have said it, you got an audience, all right? So a couple things with the audience that you want to take note of. And I'll zoom in on this because I know with the glare it's kind of hard to see some things. If you need me to move back to stuff, I certainly can. So things that you want to certainly think about with your audience are to whom are you actually speaking. There's not a whole lot that you can really do to change that in second period in C247. You're speaking to your classmates. But certainly you might want to, not verbally out loud, go, okay, Matt, I know he likes this or dislikes this, but certainly kind of be aware of whom you're speaking to so far as attitudes, viewpoints that they have, maybe previous experiences that you have had. So things that you could certainly consider about them: culture, education, social class, expectations. Certainly, when you are dealing outside of the classroom, these would be things that you want to consider as well. And don't try to think about this from an elitist standpoint of, ooh, education. I'm speaking to someone who does not have a college degree, so I'm going to dumb it down for them. But you want to take in as many factors into consideration as possible. So cultural differences that could be out there. Maybe some things with vocabulary or terminology that you're throwing out that might not be relevant in some situations based on education of audience that you're looking at. Social class. And I think this last one's a big one, expectations, in the sense of what are their expectations of you. If you are speaking to an employer, they are going to have different expectations for you than compared to you speaking to a fellow employee. So certainly just being aware, cognizant of all those things of your audience would certainly be a good idea to keep in mind. I don't really remember why the purple guide is there, but should have put a flamingo in for you, Maria.
Why didn't you?
I don't know. I can't really answer that question. So we got the topic. What are you speaking about, and is it appropriate for the situation that you are in? Again, for our purposes in the class, there's only so much. The topic, it's going to be assigned, or it's something that you've pre-selected. The situation that you're in, hey, again, it's assignment time, speech class in C247 second period. This is the situation. I guess you could argue, though, that there are probably some topics that would not be appropriate for us to discuss in school. But, when you have something that you want to discuss that is significant with parents, when would not be a good time to bring that up? It could be different for different people. Mom or dad just come home from work, trying to get dinner ready, and, Elena goes, so, by the way, got this important issue you want to talk about, but that's probably not the time for it. Same thing in classroom. Is the time to go over something significant with the teacher right at the beginning of class, is trying to get things set up, log into iPads and things like that? Probably not. So making sure that the topic is going to be appropriate for the time, for the situation, for the circumstances would be something to certainly consider. Again, is that going to apply to us in the class? Probably not a whole lot, because we're just kind of designated with what we're doing. Purpose. This would certainly be a big one to kind of consider as well. What is really the purpose? What are you trying to accomplish with the speaking that's taking place? Are you going for that entertainment? Are you going for shock value? Are you trying to do a call to action? Simply try to inform, educate, persuade, and certainly other things would be in there as well. But what is the overall purpose that you are trying to accomplish? For us, hopefully most of the time it would be to educate, and we kind of talked about this yesterday. You're not taking CHS disagreement, it's CHS argument, debate. The whole idea behind having the argument is we want there to be some conflict so that the audience who is watching the argument, the debate unfold, is going to learn a little bit more about the topic than they already previously would. But if you are, in charge of a group of people and you're trying to motivate them, there could be a little bit more of a call to action. Next Wednesday night will be open house. Mom, dad, aunts, uncles can come in. I get to wave, say hi, and then I inform them about what's going on. I don't try to persuade them that you are wonderful people. Hopefully they already know that. Did you feel the sincerity with me saying that? Max, you're wonderful. Good. I'm not sure yet, Griff. I just don't know yet. Well, I'll let you know when I find out. All right, rhetorical appeals. This is the things that we were already talking about before, already mentioned, where I said we would come back to it. This is going to be the ethos, the pathos, the logos. So these are the various ways in which you can try to get your argument to appeal to the audience, to get it across, for them to better understand it, and some things hopefully that can be useful for it. So logos, this is going to appeal to a logic. I will zoom up for this, don't worry. But this is the idea where there is going to be actual reasoning, logic behind the idea that you are trying to get across. So you're not just simply doing emotional appeal or persuading, but there's logic, reasoning, validity behind your argument. The hope is that this is the main one that we really utilize throughout the course of the semester. When it says down here, we can refer to logos as text, that being the idea that we can think of it as like the text of your speech. The content of it is going to be very much in that logical reasoning, logos kind of appeal. So doesn't mean that you're solely going to rely on logic, but you will be using that as the main emphasis, the main point for the arguments that you'd be bringing forth. Ella wants her old email address back. Why?
I had a lot of stuff on there.
Like what kind of stuff?
Like the Google Drive, I had assignments, I had emails, like forwarded there.
You have assignments for this year?
Soon.
Just say yes.
Yes.
Okay, good, yeah. So you're coming up with logical reasoning. I said, this is why I should still be able to have access to my old one. Basically, right now, my whole academic life is on there. Plus, I'm trying to bridge the gap from high school to college, Common App, college essays, all those things. I need to be able to have access to it. Let me have my own email. That was a little bit of emotional appeal at the end, but there was still some logical reasoning that was taking place with it. It wasn't solely, I just love having that NS18 before my name. There's not a whole lot of reasoning to that. If you had the NS18 in front of your name, you did.
I did.
Okay. JNS.
Yeah, no, I have it.
Yeah? And then you shook your head no. I had, yeah, I know. I don't know how that whole Florence thing's going to go. You have like a backup school? Safety school? Yeah. Slippery Rock is my safety school, yeah. Just so happens I went there. It's okay. Ethos. Credibility. I'm going to zoom in for Elena. No, I'm just going to make it really tiny. Got that, Elena? Get it word for word. twisted. Getting dizzy now. All right. In some ways, you don't have a whole lot of ethos. I'm sorry. But it's something that you can create, and you can certainly build. Ethos is essentially the credibility, the author that you have. It is not necessarily the credibility of the sources that you're using, although the use of those sources and appropriate ones can build up your ethos or take it down if you don't really have credible sources. But it's essentially the presence that you bring to the table when you speak. And in some situations you could have ethos, and in some situations you may not. Based on profession, that can help with ethos. So, if the Reverend so-and-so says something, people tend to listen because they go, ooh, Reverend, minister, there's some credibility to that. If you have doctor, PhD, there might be some credibility that kind of goes along with that. If you are scheduling your classes for your senior year, and you want to know which English class you should take, and you have me for 11th grade English, I might have some credibility. If you ask me about which science classes you should take, I might not have the credibility. So it can kind of come and go. You do have the ability to kind of build it up throughout the year. What's the cliche statement so far as getting to know someone? What's the most important impression? Hopefully for you, it's the second one. A lot of times we think it was that first impression. Probably by the end of next week, you're going to do your first little speaking assignments, and so this will be the first time that we get to see Dinesh speak in front of CH's argumentation. If he wipes the floor, like Jordan gets crushed, not that I'm saying two of you will be matched up against one another, there could be that fear factor the next time he comes up with, oh my goodness, I don't want to go against him. Conversely, what happens to Jordan's credibility, ethos? When we start pulling names out of the hat, if she got annihilated the first time, all of a sudden people get excited when her name gets pulled. Ooh, maybe I'll get matched up against her, and then that'll be an easy victory for me. Probably not going to be that way, though. I think where there's like that, impenetrable fear factor taking place. Have had situations where the person who does not win the debate, when we do our first SPAR debates, they're silly topics, so there's not like research that's going into it. And we do a simple vote, all those who think Alexis won the debate, raise your hand. All those who think Griff won the debate, raise your hand. What's one of the biggest fears that people have when it comes to speaking in front of audiences? Could be a lot. What do people not want to have happen? It's like worst case scenario. Just mind goes completely blank. And we have certainly had those situations before. It was 2 or 3 years ago. I remember we were doing a SPAR debate. I don't remember what the topic was. It was probably something silly, which is better, shampoo or conditioner. And it was one of those where she went to speak and you saw the mouth move and then like total fear just set in. Whatever her idea was, it completely vanished. She stood there for like 15 seconds and then she sat down. How does that make you feel?
That's something I would do.
So there's some sympathy that's taking place. So where Matt would be laughing at the person, your heart is like going out for them. Elaine is just simply going easy victory next time I go up against this person. The neat thing though was that when we do your first SPAR debate, it's a 60-second, 30-second split. So let's say you and Hannah, you talk for 60 seconds, Hannah talks for 60 seconds. Then you talk for 30 seconds, and then she talks for 30 seconds. So it was her 60-second time that she blanked out on. She sat down, like there were literal tears, welling in her eyes and all that kind of stuff. Poor girl. But then she got back up for the second time, and she went through her argument in the 30 seconds. And I don't want to say it was as if nothing had happened, but it was a total switch from, the deer in the headlight look to she had a consistent argument that she wanted to get out. She did not win because the other person just simply had more, but I think there was now that not only you initially feeling bad, but then a little bit of a respect factor for her because she had that issue that nobody wants to be in that situation, and then to some degree she was able to kind of overcome it. So even though she lost the debate, I think her ethos, her credibility went up. So this is something that you certainly can build, whether it be through sources, whether it be through how you end up answering questions, how you carry yourself. It's something that can come down. The good news for you is I think you're pretty much all on pretty equal footing when it comes to that ethos, that credibility. But it's essentially what you bring to the argument as a person, not so much the argument itself. Pathos, this is the emotional appeal. The tricky thing with pathos is it really relies heavily on the audience. If you try to make an emotional appeal, of like sincerity, and people start laughing at you, this isn't good. Person proposes his love to Maria, and then she's whatever. That just backfired, for the poor guy. So the issue with pathos, whatever emotion you're trying to get from the audience, you have to make sure that's the one that you do. Sometimes people, what's a nice way to try to maybe get the audience on your side early on in the speech? Make a little joke, use a little humor. If nobody laughs, okay, all right, just going to move on now. It might not necessarily work quite as much. So with the emotional appeal, it's a little bit tricky because you are relying on the audience to do it. Also, we don't want an argument to solely become reliant upon emotions because we still do want to have that logical connection, that logos, the reasoning, the validity, all that kind of stuff. But certainly this is a nice way that you can get people on your side. Humor can work well, depending on the argument, patriotism, national pride, school spirit, things like that. Now, that doesn't mean at the end of every single speech you go support the troops, because that'll start to kind of get a little old very quickly, and we'll realize that there's not really any sincerity behind it. Then the two that people are not quite as familiar with. We have telos here, and it's not really, I shouldn't say it's not widely used in modern rhetoric, but it's not really identified much in modern rhetoric or really kind of thought of. But it's really like the attitude, the purpose, kind of going back to that entertain, inform, persuade, some cases deceive, manipulate. But what are you trying to accomplish? What is that purpose that you are trying to achieve through the speech? And the last one then is the kairos. Oops, what happened? I missed it. Where'd you go? There you are. This is the setting. Again, not much you can do about it. Your setting is going to be C247, second period. You do get the choice of podium. Maggie, do you want like the little one or do you want the big platform? Christmas lights, like spread out, have your stuff there. Both have stools, so you can sit or stand either way. Setting, time, place. Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. Where does he give it? It's in Washington, D.C. Anyone recall where in Washington, D.C. specifically? He's by the pond. It's behind him. You have Lincoln Memorial. So he, in 1963, and he makes an allusion to this, what did Lincoln sign, act in 1863? The Emancipation Proclamation, and he talks about 100 years later, 100 years later. So he's making reference to what Lincoln has done, and so far as freeing the slaves. Still talking about segregation that's going to be taking place, even though it might not be slavery. He's still having some very negative issues taking place at that time. And he, last year, we certainly talked about this, those who had it in the English class. Anyone remember how he starts off his speech? Opening lines? Doesn't say, I have a dream. Starts off 50 ago, which score is 20 years, so 5 20s or 100 years ago. And what is Lincoln's probably most famous line with his Gettysburg Address? 407 years ago. So he makes an allusion to Lincoln's words. So all of this stuff is appropriate, not just because he's in Washington, D.C., but you have Lincoln in his like limestone, granite, whatever the monument's made out of, easy chair sitting there behind him. All of those things kind of come together to make it a little bit more effective. Got a video. We're going to skip it just for time consideration. Here's where I think things can get a little bit, I don't want to say more useful, but I think probably more practical for you. So Aristotle has those rhetorical appeals, ethos, pathos, logos, keros, telos. And then he also has a structure to the argument, and this is kind of like this is what you want to do. And he breaks it up into, 4 parts: introduction, the statement, which is like your thesis, the argument, the conclusion. Not really anything new kind of going on, but you would be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't, at how many times people will come up to present their ideas and they don't really follow through with this structured order, and it really can end up having a little bit of an awkward feel to it. So you have the introduction. Introduction, this is when you really want to kind of introduce the topic itself. Sometimes people skip by it. Alexis and Hannah are going to be doing their argument about which is better, Wendy's or McDonald's. Do you have a strong conviction? Wendy's. She said it first. Sorry. Why do you like Wendy's?
I've had pretty bad experiences with McDonald's, so I just trust Wendy's more.
Okay. Why do you like Wendy's? Very specific reason. I like the soda fountain machine where you can have grapefruit Fanta and mix it in with like black cherry Coke, and their fake fireplace just makes it feel nice, warm, and cozy. So, but introduction, you would want to make it clear. Can't agree on the same issue, but you would want to make it clear what side you're on. What is the topic that you're dealing with? Sometimes people will just go right into, I had this very bad experience at McDonald's. And if we don't know the context for why this is going on, there's just not really much of a flow kind of to it. So when you are doing your introduction, a couple things you want to try to kind of take into consideration. Consider who your target audience is. Nice thing with Wendy's versus McDonald's. Probably most of us have been there. We're all in situations where you need fast food, pick up something quick. McDonald's does have the cheddar bacon fries, which I made reference to yesterday, that are very good. Which one? No, which machine? The ice cream machine? Like for the soft serve or like a McFlurry type?
Yeah.
And the one McDonald's on midnight, I think they just closed. I think they're redoing. Yeah, the one.
The only thing open is the drive-thru.
Is it the one by dealership?
Yeah.
Not the Chipotle one's still open.
Yeah.
It's very bad when you refer to a restaurant by another restaurant. The Chipotle McDonald's. So consider your audience. You're making a good impression. You're trying to establish your ethos, and if you do a little appeal to emotion, you certainly want to make sure it's going to be, an appropriate one. But you're trying to get them on your side and get them with you, not certainly going against you. So in the opening, you're kind of taking care of all these things. Within that opening, you also then want to make sure that you do make your statement about your position. And so, I firmly believe that Wendy's is superior to McDonald's. Now we know exactly where you're at. So you want to state your viewpoint. We're hopefully not going to do this with politics or anything like that, but you don't want to promise more than you actually can prove based on some kind of issue that you could be taking a look at. One thing you would want to consider, is it debatable? For our purposes, that's not going to be an issue. If I'm giving you the green light to debate on it, that means it's debatable. This could be something that you might want to consider before you get in an argument with a parental unit at home. Is your curfew debatable? I don't know. Is you borrowing the car debatable? Maybe, maybe not. Is Maria taking down that pink flamingo debatable? Absolutely not. Do you have like flamingos on a Christmas tree?
Yeah, that's what my last year's Christmas tree was.
Only flamingos on the tree?
Only flamingos. We had like pink lights.
How many Christmas trees do you have in?
In my bottom
How many like total?
Total, we have one on veterans, so.
Like a little tree or?
Like little trees, like
Okay.
4 foot tall.
Well, 4 foot's not little.
In total, like 7.
Do you have like 30 of those totes that like go up in the attic?
Yeah.
More than 30. Yep.
We take Christmas very seriously.
We start decorating. That must be for
Last
Oh
week.
no, it takes less than like a week.
It's just a tornado comes through Christmas flamingos. You do want to make sure, though, with your thesis, with your statement, that all the points that you are making throughout are referring back to it. You know, that they all are in support of this argument that you already stated, so it is clear and consistent throughout the course of the whole entire thing. And then it comes to actually having the argument, the proof that comes along with it. And this is something that we're going to be really looking at for the next couple weeks, the kind of type of proof that you can have. I don't want to make it seem as if it can only be these, but probably the main 3 that get used are facts, could be personal stories, anecdotes, or testimonials. Could be testimonials of friends. It could be like expert testimonials, you know, according to, but you're getting some kind of credibility along those lines. Not to like stereotype, but I'm kind of going to. Guys, males tend to use certain kind of facts. And I don't know if it's because of sports or whatnot, but guys generally tend to boil it down to the use of, any ideas? Statistics. Guys like having statistics. Be careful with numbers, because numbers can get manipulated to mean a lot of different things. You know, Griff could go 52% of people are in favor of this, so it's the majority. I could very quickly go roughly half of the people are opposed to it. So, you know, they can kind of get manipulated to do what you want. And also statistics don't always tell kind of like the whole story with things. So whatever kind of facts you do use, make sure you don't always go back to that same type of fact over and over again, because then you kind of become kind of predictable with it. So you do want to have the best examples that are available. I know this is kind of hard to read right now. Address the opposing viewpoints, and a lot of times we'll have a segment of time where you are able to do that, or rebuttal, where, okay, you've heard the argument that Noel brought forth, now you're able to kind of respond to it. But you do want to address what their viewpoints are. Don't misrepresent the opposing claims. That's a logical fallacy we'll get into later, a straw man appeal, where you take something that someone has done and you try to flip it. You know, it would be a fallacy for McKella to go, North Hills does not want me to get into college because they're taking all my college application stuff and they're deleting it from, you know, Google Drive. Why are they out to do this to me? That's a misrepresentation of what's taking place. If it's a hot, heated kind of argument, that might kind of start to happen a little bit, but you certainly don't want to do that with what your opponent has said. You know, Alexis just said all the McDonald's are terrible, and Amanda was backing her up that you can't get ice cream there. That's kind of taking it a little bit further than what those statements were. So you don't want to do a misrepresentation, and then just make sure there's a nice kind of logical progression to the ideas that you are presenting. The closing, the epilogue, kind of comes in 4 parts here, so we'll try to move through these fairly quickly. When you're wrapping up, this is kind of like your little checklist that you want to try to do. Make the audience like you, and make them not like your opponent nearly as much. Sometimes that can be tricky. They find the opponent adorable. Matt, people think you're adorable. What can I say? Guess we'll finish up on Monday. Remember, for Monday, we got reading check quiz for lottery and the article, that homework assignment, and then a syllabus signature. Forgot to ask, anyone have a syllabus signature they want to give to me now? I can take it, or if you want to wait till Monday, doesn't matter. iPads, you can just leave on the desk.